and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start with our public input statement from the Vice Chair.
The first public input session is a 15-minute session with each person having no longer than 3 minutes in which to make a statement. A second public input session may be held at the end of the meeting if allowed by the board chair. The speaker will give his or her name, address, and reason for speaking. Public input is designed for Noble residents. The board chair may grant non-residents the opportunity to address the board. Statements concerning subject matter that falls under the law regarding executive sessions cannot be made during public input. For example, matters involving personnel.
That being said, do we have any public input tonight? No?
Terry, you passing on this one? All right.
Okay, so moving on to minutes of February 14th. Do we have?
Can we set those aside so that they'll
And do the next
appear at the next meeting?
Yeah, so we're going to table that till next meeting.
Thank you.
Do we have to vote on that? Or does it?
No, we'll just table it.
Okay. All right, then we have our student report.
It's been a while, but I'm here.
I think he's grown
Do I
since
see?
the last
I
time.
think so. I think so.
Okay. So last time I talked a lot about a podcast that some students and I were planning, and on Tuesday we talked to Mr. Finley, and he said yes. And we have a space in the tech wing where we practiced this morning, and we're planning on shooting a video every Thursday before school, and you know, maybe it'll be once a month or every 2 weeks or every week. But our goal is to get people engaged, whether it's just watching it because it's more engaging than listening to the announcements, or you know, going to different clubs and videotaping them, see how they run, and just help everybody see kind of what's going on in the school more, which I think is pretty cool. And what we want to do, we're working with the tech department right now to see if we can put it on the screens, all the new TVs that we have this year, and display that on Mondays, a couple minutes before school starts, just so everybody can see it, and so we can have everybody involved. And I think it's going to be pretty awesome. And that's on its way to being fully here.
Who are the other students doing?
Maya, Clark, and Oliver Allen, and then we're waiting for more people to kind of help with the whole process, which I think will take a lot of the stress off of me.
They're doing which piece?
So it's going to be kind of like a video podcast. So,
The video part.
but they're the ones talking. I'm just kind of recording it and editing it and putting it up. So that'll be something to look forward to. And if any of the board wants, you know, if you guys want something that needs to be displayed to the entire school, we're also doing PSAs in it, and like just everything, including you guys, and making it more, you know, making the school more aware of you, and just kind of everybody just knowing what's going on a little better. I think would be pretty cool.
Are they going to be available online, so if we wanted to watch it, we could?
So-
That was going to be my question.
Yes, they would be on YouTube and Spotify, as well as hopefully on the website if we can. And we're working towards making a pilot episode right now, and kind of see what it's like, see how people react, and then we'll go from there and just see what's going on.
I would like to meet with you and maybe student council as well to talk about PSAs for the upcoming spring, well in preparation for the upcoming spring. Things like Students Against Drunk Drivers, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, those
Absolutely.
sorts of things to
Right.
put on an event for the school prior to proms and so forth, so that
Great idea.
I've been at other high schools when that has happened, and they're extremely powerful. I watch the students as the action is occurring, the simulations and so forth, and I'm amazed at the expressions on their faces.
Yeah, Mr. Finley said something about how there used to be an almost daily video, like 15 years ago, I think he said, and they would do PSAs as well. But he said they really they paid attention and they understood what was happening, which is nice to grasp students' attention for a PSA. But I think that's definitely something we can do.
I love it.
Good.
And then I'd like to reschedule with you about
Yes.
the legislation.
Love to do that.
Super. If you just stop down and see Mrs. Flora.
Sure.
Good. Anything else?
Yes, a couple things. So chicken ball tournament is happening on Wednesday. If there's a snow day, it's the 12th. We don't have enough teams and a lack of interest, which is probably due to just not spreading the word enough, which we can do. We're thinking of extending the deadline, which is tomorrow, to Monday, just so people can hear it more and then sign up. But we'll see. It's usually a huge hit, but we'll see if we have enough teams to do it. Hopefully we do.
Is that the kiosk that's out here in the middle of the town square that's $15
No,
or
I think this
something?
place had that for the yearbooks.
Oh, that was yearbooks, huh?
Yeah. But there was a few other ones in the last couple days too. School dances. All school dance on the 15th, or the 15th, and then a sophomore freshman one on April 5th. And then a few things from student council that we were planning on helping with, and at least that are coming up or have happened, I'm not sure. They're kind of just going things. There's a Ryan Home fundraiser. I did not sign up for that, but student council is trying to get involved with that. There's also the Dress for Success clothing drive, the TVs, and those are both Miss Manning's. I think that she's organizing them. She asked us for some help. We're trying to get involved, and a lot of that kind of cabin fever coming out. We're all getting ready to do stuff. A lot of volunteering happening. And the last thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know best, but we did fairly well in wrestling. But I believe Josh Cody got 5th in New England's.
And you get your second straight states
Right,
as
yeah.
a sophomore.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
just the health factor, just stay healthy. We could be looking at a 4-peat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's always something to look forward to. And just a note that would be something we would hope to do on the podcast, is have some, like an interview, a guest star. Maybe could have someone on who's won 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
And, how are you feeling about this? Great. Get everybody pumped. But yeah, so that's about it. And there's a lot going on, but it's all good.
Good, thank you very much. All right, number 6. Are we going to postpone this, number 6?
Yes, until we finish the executive sessions.
Right, so going to go over the salaries once we finish what we started earlier.
Yep.
All right, so then we're going to go to number 7, nomination of administrators. All right, so I have a list of people that's, administrators aren't listed the same as teacher contracts, for instance, or other contracts. It's not, these are probationary, these are non-probationary. It's listed as 2-year contract for people who are, let's think of them as the continuing contract people. And then there's 1-year contracts for people who were probationary first year this year, and so it would be looking into their second, if you want to say, probationary year. So I'm going to read off a list. I'll check with you to see how you would like me to handle that, though. there's the potential that I could read off a list of 2-year contracts, and then list off the 1-year contracts, and I can do them as a 2-year group, or I could do them individually. It's a flavor of the board.
What would the board like to do?
Whatever works best.
The group?
Do it by groups? Anybody have an objection to that? Go for it.
Audra Beauvais, I'm going to list the person and the position. Audra Beauvais, Principal, Berwick Elementary Schools. Shannon Swiger, Assistant Principal, Hussey Elementary School. It says Berwick on Audra instead of Hussey. It's the older title. Michelle Keniston, Principal, Milton Elementary Schools. It's her first year as principal this year, but she's not considered probationary because she was an administrator the previous year in the district. Patty Gilly, Principal, Lebanon Elementary School. Heather LaFlance, Assistant Principal, Lebanon Elementary School. Mike Archambault, Principal, North Berwick Elementary School. Mike Roberts, Principal, Millville Middle School. Melinda Luders, Assistant Principal, Millville Middle School. Joe Finley, Principal, Millville High School. Allison Kearney, Assistant Principal, Millville High School. Tyler Windsor, Assistant Principal, Millville High School. Is that 9 of them? No, just kidding. Heidi Early Hersey, Director of Teaching and Learning. Chris Russo, Technology Director. Half, our district, half of his salary is paid through MSAD 35. Paul Slavinsky, Assistant Athletic Director. Brenda Gagne, Director of Adult Education. Susan Macri, Special Education Director. Laura Lenahan, Assistant Special Education Director. Tyler Goodwin, School Nutrition Director. Tyler is considered on a second year, on a 2-year plan, but we understand that there were some mitigating circumstances in the first 2 years of his employment. So, but he's still listed as a second-year person. Brenda Cravens, Transportation Director. Kevin Moore, Facilities Director. The only one I don't have on that list for you is the Excel Director, as that's an open position since Fern is retired. That's the first group.
So, somebody want to make a motion on that first group? Or?
I'll make a motion to accept that first group.
I'll second that motion.
Denise has a second.
All in favor of accepting the 2-year list?
5, 6, 7.
7, right?
And the 1-year list is a much shorter list. Would you like to go through that one at a time? Would you like to go through that as a group? What is your preference? Or whatever works.
Group. You okay with group? Okay.
All right. Jamie Jones, Assistant Principal, Millville High School. Aaron Watson, Athletic Director. Tracy Hallisey, Assistant Principal, North Berwick Elementary School. And Jeremiah Sear, Bus Maintenance, shop foreman.
Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept that group as a 1-year contract.
Second?
Travis and Streeter, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the people on the 1-year contract list? Anybody opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry if we already covered this, but on the 2-year list, if one of them is an open position?
Is it, I'm just, there's been no movement on that because it's still posted. So
Okay.
when that gets posted, I'll bring it forward as
But would that new
potential
person
hiring.
go into a 2-year?
No,
Okay, all right.
great question, thank you.
Okay, number 8, budget presentation and board discussion.
So, back in December, at the end of the month, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll go that way. Those will go that way. On December 20th, I provided a budget draft, things that I believe would roll forward as consideration for this, the 2019-2020 school budget. And I've done a refresh on that, and I'm just going to hit a few quick highlights. Once I'm finished with that, Denise is going to share a projected revenue proposed budget effective of today's date, the most recent. And then we have an adjusted 2019-20 budget timeline. Part of the situation that puts us in the need to adjust the timeline so that people in the public are aware is that when you have a changeover in party, doesn't matter whether it's Democrat to Republican, Republican to Independent, whatever, there's a little bit more time frame built into the construction of the budget and sharing that information, and that has a big impact to schools, obviously, as it does municipalities. We received the state subsidy report, that famous ED 279, on February 15th. If people check their calendars, they would see that was the Friday prior to the vacation. I was away for the week after that. Some of the people were from central office, so we started working on with that new information this week, and we have some more work to do. I don't want to give you something that hasn't been vetted by enough eyes yet, so that the information that you're receiving is accurate. So we've got some adjustments to the timeline, but we'll continue to be on track later on in the process. We'll share that last. So if you check the first form out, it says the first draft budget timeline, February 1st, I just noted typically February 1st, but you see the ED 279 on February 15th, which was 4 school days ago. Moving Noble High School from 2 houses to 3 houses in grades 8 and 9, which would reduce each of those classes from 26, 27, and then 1 or 2 cases 28 to 22 to 23 students, which is not an overly burdensome number in either case, but the problem that we have is some of our rooms aren't designed large enough to contain as many students at the high school size, 8th, 9th grades as well. That change, as well as you may recall that there was a Bar Family Foundation grant and $750,000 worth that we received 2 years ago. This year was the first year that the funds were put in place. The 19-20 budget, there are still more funds coming, but there's a winnowing of the support. The school picks up some of the contracts. So there are 2 teaching contracts and 1 educational technician contract for the multiple pathways grant. Those positions alone account for $550,000 in the new budget. So that's a significant change. Transportation, we had originally put in that we would be seeking 5 and 2, 5 large, 2 small buses. We heard good news from the state that we would get some subsidy. I'll get into that in just a second. I've adjusted this to a 4 and 2 at this time because of the need for all the budgeting pieces that you'll see. And that's a savings of about $18,000 over each year of the life of that extra bus, each year the lease purchase, excuse me. So in 1920, the state subsidy, we were informed that we will receive 1 large and 2 small. The state will pay for 1 large and 2 small buses. So that, but the money that we get for that is the year up. So we have to budget for those and pay for those in the budget. So that hits our expenses. But the second year out, in 2021, we get reimbursed for that. It doesn't help our number, our percent, to drive down at all. And each bus is, large buses are 85-ish, 86,000. Smaller buses are 60, approximately 60, 65. Okay.
Did you skip the contracts?
Yeah, I'm just hitting
just
the
hit the
highlights.
reds. Okay.
Yep. So you may recall that we had a mini bus that was damaged recently, and there was a question. You might recall that. Did I talk to you? No. Oh, that's right. It was in the report. Yes. So I just think I'm gonna see you at all of those.
I just passed the bus stop before it happened.
Oh.
Trespassing, and seen a warning.
Okay. So that bus, we thought the likelihood was that it would need to be replaced, which would never be a good scenario. That means we couldn't replace it till the following year. However, we did get the word from the insurance company and the garage that does the work on the vehicle that can be repaired. So there's the insurance deductible, that'll be subrogated, and then we'll have that bus back in service. So that's a relief. At the middle school, phase 3 will likely have to be moved into the bond process, and it's largely driven on the fact that the asbestos abatement is going to take up 6 weeks. So the school would have to be shut down, the asbestos abatement to occur, and that means that none of the other projects can be moving at the same time. So that means we're into at least 2 summers with that process. Mike and I met recently with Neil Raposa from Civil Consultants and heard some of those timelines. The guidance social work at Elks is actually just a .2 addition. North Berwick Elementary School, we're not technically adding a position from 1819 to 1920. We added a kindergarten this year, so it's already in place. So we're just continuing to keep that into the 1st grade next year. But we didn't have it listed in the budget last year, so the cost for that teacher is not in the budget, and we have to put that in for next year. So it's not saying we're going to add 1 more classroom. It's already there, but we have to account for the cost of the teacher. Facilities projects, we're applying for the revolving renovation funds that are available through the state. That is for the following kinds of things. Noble Middle School asbestos abatement, Noble High School roof repairs, structural repairs to Lebanon Elementary to reduce heating costs. You may recall that that's much more expensive than the building that's twice the size next door. And Noble High School exterior wall repairs. You may recall that we're trying to do 30,000 a year as sections. Those are possible targets to be using the revolving renovation fund for. And if we qualify, that means that we can put some of our other fund balance towards other activities instead of these activities. The available use of fund balance for this year will be $250,000. And we've been in the process of going through and selecting which items would be on that list. Mr. Moore is, unfortunately, he's been a victim of the flu this week and is not enjoying himself right now. So once he's back in action, we'll complete that work. State subsidies. So there's some good pieces in here. The mill rate has moved, oh, I forgot to write that that's the mill rate, has moved from 8.48. You might have said what that was.
You know, I figured that's what it was.
8.48 to 8.28. So dropping the mill rate means that that's going to end up being a plus for us. Thank you. Fund balance. As you may recall, last spring we spent $300,000 on one-time paving projects. Milton Elementary School would be a very good example of that. Past the apron, the curve into the school, the ripples in the parking lots, just breaking up. So we had to catch up on some of our paving projects. So that's $300,000 that we don't have this year to offset some other one-time projects. Also, last year, we knew at the time that in order to help alleviate some of the tax burden to the citizens for this 18-19 budget, that we took $400,000 from the fund balance and applied that. And the initial reason for that was, well, the 2 things. One, the percent to taxpayers, and the second one was you're only allowed to carry up to 3% in your fund balance. And our projection was that we had more than the 3%, so we spent that money down to offset. but it wasn't on one-time projects. It was just to offset costs in the district. So this year, we knew we would be facing and we talked about that last budget season, there would be a $400,000 hole created. Good news piece is our population is up, so that means that we receive more subsidy from the state. The total subsidy increase between things like the change in the mill rate and the population change is that the state subsidy will be up $730,000 approximately. These are still preliminary numbers. Here's a very interesting thing that Denise and Gorham Savings Bank, a representative from Gorham Savings Bank, has worked out. We've changed how we deal with the bank interest that we accrue on our operating account. It's now tied to T-bills. Well, that means it's a variable rate, so you never can say exactly what you're going to see. But we were averaging, prior to changing to the T-bill variable rates, we were averaging $300 to $400 a month in interest, and now we're averaging $4,000 a month
Wow.
for interest.
Wow.
The interest in the month of January was $7,800.
Yeah, I know.
I can't get it on
So
that.
when you think
Instead of like
about
10 cents a month.
when you think about how much liquid assets that we have to be able to pay our payroll at any given time, that's a good sum of money, but it's going to fluctuate. I mean, if you have a 7,800, you're going to have a 1,500 in there too. But we're averaging 4,000, so I believe in the projected budget that Denise will share, she's done a projection of about $30,000 increase in that area.
I would just like to briefly thank Christine Weymouth, she's the VP at Gorham, who approached me last summer and said, you know, you have a balance and I think we can do better for you interest-wise, let's sit down and talk about it. So we chatted and she put it, you know, we signed the form, she put it into place, it was painless, and all of a sudden we're receiving tons of money. So they did a very good job by us.
Oh, I'm not sure of the weight of it, but we're receiving a good deal more.
Yeah.
Thank you, we appreciate you working. We have a very good working relationship with the bank. We're just a good customer for them, so they pay attention.
A long time.
And we have equally good working relationships with several of our local banks as well. We are currently, Denise, Sue, and I are working with administrators to continue to bring the superintendent proposed budget down to a 6.75. When I sent out notification, I'm just going to hazard a guess and say it was a month ago, to business managers and what is town manager, excuse me, what is Chip Harlow's title? Is he
Well, he
chairperson of
was
the?
the chair, but he has since not chair now, somebody else is.
Oh, who's the other person? Is it Mrs.
Paul.
Bragg, Laura Bragg, or is it
No,
Paul?
Paul Philbrook, right?
I don't know which one it is.
I'm pretty
okay,
sure it's
well,
Paul.
So,
It just recently happened, right? Yeah, it just recently.
Yes, that just
okay.
happened last week.
all right, thank you. Didn't realize that. So I sent out a notification to them saying that we're looking at a 7-ish. When you take the whole from the mill rate, when you take the contracts that are already in place, we've got 2 contracts open right now as well. And when you take the need to move from 2 houses to 3 houses at the 8th and 9th grade level, those are substantial, plus the portables that we're putting in. Those are not, none of those are small ticket items, the buses. And this is a sheet that Denise has prepared. I will pass this
Can I
on.
ask a question? Is this
Please
good time to
do.
ask a question? Last year, sometime mid-year, you said that the free and reduced lunch applications were down, which actually sort of ironically was going to have a negative impact on state subsidy.
Yeah.
Whatever ended up, how did that,
How did that
a year
play out?
ago? Yeah, how did it play out?
Okay, so that is a separate category, like adult ed as a whole stands by itself, and food service as of this 18-19 school year stands by itself. I think that please catch me on this too.
Yep.
I think that the food program ran substantially in the plus side this previous 17-18 school year. I believe that was the audit finding. And now the question is, how is this going to impact our
Right, so the
subsidies?
ED 279 has a section in it with weighted counts that uses that percentage in part of its calculation. And the percentage that's used is 31.7, which again, we were seeing numbers up close to and over 40 at one point.
And we had
40%.
one town at 50%.
So that's significantly lower. So when that number is lower, as it factors through the calculation, we are getting less money because of that.
But exactly how much it hits, they use that in so many pieces of the ED 279, it's hard to tease out exactly what's the overall impact to it.
When we get the budget books, I'm going to have a section and I'll have the printed ED 279 in it, and we can certainly kind of walk through and talk about some of those.
Estrella, did I give enough up that side?
Yeah.
And William, you're all set, everybody set, did you? Okay, great.
Okay.
Ms. VC.
Okay, so again, one thing to notice is the very big draft in the upper left corner. We are working very hard to take our EDCEP 279 results and work with the expenses we have. You'll see this sheet is actually the revenue sheet that we use during the budget process. The top line budget expenditures, you'll see the proposed for fiscal 20 is approximately a 2.4% increase over the fiscal 19 expenses. And that increase, you'll see again to the right, is approximately $990,000. We are still working to get to that number, but we're confident that we will do so. Below that, under the revenue sources, you'll see the increase there in the general purpose aid. That is the ED 279 revenue that the state sends us. And again, to the right, you'll see that's up approximately $730,000. If we continue down, the fund balance lines are there. So last year we used fund balance for one-time projects of approximately $745,000, and then the additional $420, as Steve mentioned earlier. This year we have approximately $245,000 to put toward projects around the district. A lot of this is similar. You'll see the reimbursement for culinary arts. Last year we put in an estimate. We weren't sure at the time if John Kuchar and the culinary arts program that was housed here, if they were going to be in our building or not. So we put in both the revenue and the expenses, assuming they would be here. We did not have to pay out the money, and we did not receive the money. So that is 0 for 19, and it will be 0 for 20 and going forward.
That program we got at the midpoint of the year.
The MHA student tuitions, we have 4 in our budget for fiscal 19, and we anticipate again having 4 for next year. It doesn't preclude, we've had a couple people come in unexpectedly and maybe one go, but that has been largely pretty stable, those 4 tuitions, so we feel confident in those. The international student program revenue, when we have students from China that come to the high school, they pay tuition to the district for their stay. And in previous years, they had a very rigorous enrollment in that program, so they had built up quite a balance out there. So we thought it was appropriate that we were using it to offset some of the costs that are incurred in educating them.
We had 8 students at one point in 1 year.
Right.
And this year we have 2.
This year we have 2.
It's just a swing.
And you never really know. So unless there's a balance there that I feel comfortable that would not take all of the money that they have to do what they need, I'm not confident that they'll have extra money for us in the coming year. So it's currently at 0. We can take a look at that, but again, we don't really know and have people sign, we don't have anybody officially
No,
signed on.
Not yet. We have 5 potential students for next year, but that's all at this point. We actually have recruiters in Chongqing that we work with, and we have we're at a little, public schools are at a deficit to public-private schools around this topic. If you're a public-private, like Thornton Academy, let's say, you can have foreign exchange students for a 2-year visa. If you're a public school, you can have them for 1. So students can come here only for their senior year. That's a sizable deficit if you look at the populations between Thornton's number of students and ours. Of course, they have dormitories too, which helps, but that's why they have the dormitories. They have the number of students.
The next line again is the bank interest that we just talked about. Again, if you average $4,000 a month in bank interest, you're going to have about $48,000 for the year. Where it's tied to the T-bill, I really don't want to, I'm not confident enough. We haven't been with it long enough. So I did increase it. Year to date, we have approximately $29,000 in bank interest. So I'm feeling good about this number, and maybe we'll inch it up a little, but I want to get another little bit under my belt and see what that.
See what the average is.
Yes.
Keep it conservative, yeah.
Yes, exactly, because there's nothing like having to dig yourself out of a hole. We went down in national board certification salary supplements. The state of Maine pays teachers through us for having their national board certification. They're generally around $3,000 a piece. And this coming year, we anticipate having 2 teachers that qualify for that. And then just below that is just a very brief look at local taxes. So the way this spreadsheet works, if you take the $42,250,000 of budget expenditures at the top, and you deduct the anticipated revenue, that leaves you with $20,411,000 to be local taxes. The $19,120,000 was last year's local taxes, which brings us to the $1.3 million increase, which equates to a 6.75% increase.
And we're still working right now to figure out another.
So again, the
400,000.
expenses going up 2.4, but the impact to taxpayers is 6.75.
Is that because we used the fund balance last year?
Well, so the expenditures increased by $1 million, and we lost we're down about $300,000 in revenue. And part of that is that it's equal to what we did in paving last spring. It's all kind of factored in there, but.
Yeah, we knew at the time.
So, and again, this is our draft, and you'll have the final version when you get your books.
So is the plan,
You're probably trying to say the same thing I'm trying to say.
is the plan to have this come to the Facilities and Finance Committee in the very near future so that we can
Is this a
dissect
segue?
it
The
more?
timeline is coming.
Is
No,
this a
this is
slide
not a
right into
segue.
that.
This is something that I wish I had towards tonight's meeting though,
Okay.
so that we could have dissected it more then.
Well, we would have loved to have given it to you before tonight's meeting,
I think we
but
just finished it about an hour
4
ago.
days, we got it 4 days, the information 4 days ago. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is, and I think it's 6:02 or about somewhere in there. So it is literally hot off the press, but it gets into the
Can I ask you a
timeline.
question before we go on?
Oh, yeah.
So that is your target, is 6.75%?
Yeah, yeah, and we're not down to that yet.
Well, just to speak for my own town,
Yeah.
that is having, bonding out their own issues, different projects. I don't know if that's gonna fly.
So just to be clear though, the expenditures aren't up 6.7% for the budget, it's 2.4%. So it's just like, where do you go to get it?
Yeah.
But
I
I
know,
get it, I
I-
totally get it.
I get it.
Yeah, I get it too.
But all of these towns have their own
Yeah, I get it.
expenses, and when
I
you're
totally
already
get it.
paying, what, $450,000 a month, or whatever the payment is, I don't know what it is exactly, but yeah. I tried to
get it.
justify that amount's gonna be tough.
Well, you have kids coming in and
I know.
find places
I
for
know.
But we'll also give you that opportunity, you know, we'll give you the budget and you can look at it and see what you think you wanna go through, it's
Yeah,
okay.
it's gonna end up being a award budget.
Yeah. Hard stuff, for sure.
So now we have updated timeline, is that what you're
Yes.
You
I'm sorry.
know,
Yeah, I'll put it in the minutes too, yeah. I can share it, yeah, I can share it. It's fine.
So you'll notice that the receipt of information means that we have a condensed time frame, and we have a number of workshops to get through. There are some meetings in there that there are some things listed in here that aren't dates for the group to meet, and there are others in here that are listed as if necessaries, and that's a board decision. So for instance, Tuesday, March 5th, the budget binders to the board and the Facilities and Finance Subcommittee.
Can I stop you there for a second? We have a committee meeting on the 4th.
And we're going to talk to people about postponing the meeting on the 4th because you won't have the information until the 5th. Yep.
And Joan's not able to be here that night, I believe, the 4th.
Right.
So, does that mean we're meeting on the 5th
No.
as a board?
No.
No, we're gonna find you.
No. You will.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
We will.
Theoretically.
We'll see if you make it up on driveway.
I'll bring my truck, 4-wheel drive.
Well, actually, my car's all-wheel drive now. They say it is, but I've never.
Hey, I got
I
a
don't know
place
how
to
figure
test it out.
That's what I'm looking for. So people just let me know. And Rebecca, I think we did this last year, didn't we? The drop off of the notebooks. Okay. So, oh, and Lynn, yeah, I think I came over to your place last year. So Joanne, we'll make the rounds, Travis. Looking forward to getting out and seeing the neighborhoods. So then there's 2 sets of administrator presentations. We'll break those up into level groups and topics. Then on March 14th, it's the preliminary. So while the Facilities and Finance Subcommittee is meeting with the administrators on the 11th and the 13th, we'll be working through posters and charting of information that's there for potential decision sheet ideas, and then there'll be, we'll run through a protocol for that to come to some decisions about which things will go on to that, so that it can go out the next day to the rest of the board, and then that will be presented. There's no decision being asked for, so it's not, if somebody says, well, I wished I'd had it in advance, we created it the two nights, like within 3 nights before that, so it'll be a presentation of it on the 14th. Then on the 21st is the first budget workshop, and then there's a Q&A opportunity also with cost center managers. That's all the principals and directors here. On the 26th, additional budget workshop if necessary, and then the 28th on, I think, was pretty much intact from the previous one, from the previous draft.
So we have board meetings each of the Thursdays.
Yes. And then we put in 2 potentials just to say to board members, if you feel you need more time to sit and work together. We realize that it's a tough time frame, but I'm glad that the vote's in June.
The district meeting is still listed at the gym. We'll move that to the auditorium.
Oh, boy, keep doing that.
It keeps coming up as a gym.
Oh, yeah, all right.
It's in
The timeline, I'll fix it.
district budget meeting is in the auditorium.
When you get your, I'm sending it to you in the via Google Docs too, so it'll be updated and everything will be.
Can we send the invites for all these
Yes,
facility
we will, we're gonna give
tomorrow,
this,
I
yep,
asked the same
so
thing.
that I can have them show up on my
yep,
calendar?
we're gonna give it to Jen in the morning and she'll.
If I add it to my calendar, it gets added again.
when I get those.
Yeah, I get it.
Is it-
Can BCTV get a copy of those dates? Any date that doesn't
Sure.
fall on a planning board meeting night, I'd be happy to record.
You got it?
I'll give you a paper copy to start with.
That works too. And if you change them, could you let me know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Personal touch, Mr. Collins.
Is that it as far as the budget goes?
Yes.
All right. Moving to number 9, donations. And your donations?
Noble Middle School Building Pride Day received a donation from United Way of York County in Kennebunk. It's a check in the amount of $1,500 made payable to Noble Middle School. Donation will be used for equipment for the middle school building Pride Week. We need a motion to accept that.
Would you like to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
Someone like to second that?
Sorry.
Did we have one?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Lynn. Okay, all in favor of accepting this donation?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you.
All right, moving to number 10, employment, new hires, retirement, and resignations.
None at
It
this
says
time.
none at this time.
Yeah, it's that one.
Okay?
Yeah, no, that's good for all of us.
All right, now to other. Number 11. You don't have any others?
I don't know. Would you like something?
No.
This is a first. All right then, if anyone, this is time for the second public input session, if anybody would like to speak to us about anything. No?
Travis did in a second. For the exit into, from the public meeting,
Executive
it
session.
would be to, a motion to
What's the number?
continue the 4056B
Okay,
instead of the Ds.
okay. We'll make
So
that up.
we're not doing these at all.
Right.
So we're gonna do, yeah,
Are we gonna table any decisions and make it the next announcement at the next meeting?
Yeah, you
or
can't.
We have
do
to.
that?
Yeah,
We
you have to, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if we were gonna try and come back.
No, no.
So I make a motion that we go in executive session pursuant to negotiation 1 MRSA 4056B for
Employment of employee, evaluation.
evaluation of employee.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
all in favor? And we will be adjourning from that, so we will not be coming back. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
The meeting?